Does peace actually make you feel anxious? If you thrive in a crisis but fall apart in the quiet, this is for you. Do you find calm in chaos? Do you feel most like yourself when you solve a problem, manage a mess, or take care of someone else? Then when life is quiet, you feel adrift, anxious, or numb. That pattern often comes from a childhood that made you grow up too fast. Your brain learned that safety had to be earned with constant watchfulness and control, not something that was given. Today we'll break down that pattern, not to blame you, but to show how it helped you survive and how you can build a new kind of safety inside yourself. Let's talk about that feeling. The one that sits in your chest not as a sharp pain but as a constant, low hum of readiness. You're always just a little bit braced. For what? You're not even sure anymore. Maybe for a mood to shift in the room. For a problem to appear that only you can solve. For the other shoe to drop. This isn't anxiety in the clinical sense, not always. It's more like the operating system your life runs on. It's the background program that says, you must be alert, you must be competent, you must be in control. Because a long time ago, perhaps when you were so small your feet didn't touch the floor when you sat in a chair, the world showed you that no one else would be. This is the legacy of the child who grew up too fast. And if you see yourself in this, I want you to understand something crucial right from the start. Every single one of those patterns, the overresponsibility, the emotional caution, the difficulty resting, was not a choice you made. They were adaptations. They were brilliant, life-preserving solutions your young mind engineered to navigate an environment that felt unpredictable, overwhelming, or emotionally barren. You didn't get a childhood of learning through play and safe exploration. You got a childhood of learning through emotional reconnaissance and strategic appeasement. To understand why these patterns are so stubborn, why they feel so baked into your bones, we have to look at what was happening under the surface, in the very architecture of your developing brain. Research shows that prolonged stress or trauma in childhood doesn't just create bad memories. It can actively reshape the stress response systems and neural pathways that are under construction during those sensitive early years. Think of a child's brain not as a finished building, but as a massive ongoing construction site, with different crews working on different wings at different times. Now, imagine that into this construction site, a constant alarm is blaring, a chronic state of fear or uncertainty. What happens? The foreman, the brain's stress response system centered on the HPA axis, that's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, go into permanent overdrive. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the site not as a temporary alert, but as a permanent feature. And at high levels, especially during sensitive developmental windows, cortisol can have what scientists call neurotoxic effects. It can interfere with the careful wiring of the very regions being built to handle calm, connection, and thoughtful decision-making. Two areas are particularly vulnerable: the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is like the brain's CEO. It's responsible for executive functions: planning, impulse control, managing emotions, and understanding context. The amygdala is the brain's smoke alarm. It's primed for threat detection and triggering fight, flight, or freeze. In a well-regulated system, the CEO prefrontal cortex can calm down the smoke alarm, amygdala. It can say, "I see that shadow, but it's just a tree. Stand down." But in a brain shaped by early adversity, that communication line can get disrupted. Studies using brain imaging have shown that youth exposed to trauma can have a harder time automatically regulating emotional conflict. Their amygdala might be hypersensitive, sounding the alarm too loudly and too often, while the prefrontal cortex struggles to exert its calming, rational influence. What does this look like in your daily life? It's that hair-trigger startle response. It's feeling overwhelming anger or panic that seems disproportionate to a small slight. It's the opposite, too, a kind of emotional numbness, a shutting down when feelings get too intense, because your system learned that feeling fully was too dangerous. This is the neurological reinforcement loop. Your brain, wired for hypervigilance, constantly scans the environment for threat. It finds it in a coworker's tone, in a partner's quiet moment, in the open space of a free Saturday. This triggers the old stress response. You then use your mastered skill, control. You manage the situation, you fix the problem, you absorb the emotion. The crisis is averted, and your brain learns once again, see. Constant vigilance and control are what keep us safe. It's a loop that proves itself true over and over. The intention is to find peace, but the automatic response is to recreate the conditions of safety you knew as a child, which was never true peace, but the tense calm of averted disaster. This pattern manifests everywhere. In relationships, you might be the rock, the caregiver, but struggle to be vulnerable or to let others care for you. Needing help can feel terrifying, triggering a deep-seated fear of disappointment. In conflict, you might freeze or flee, because your brain reads disagreement as a dangerous threat to stability, not a normal part of human connection. At work, you might be stellar under pressure but burn out in periods of calm, or be crippled by perfectionism, because your sense of worth is tied to your utility and flawlessness. Self-perception is where it gets especially tangled. You likely have a profound disconnect between your intellectual age and your emotional experience. You can run a household, manage finances, give wise advice, yet feel like a lost, small child inside. You might feel a deep sense of loneliness, even in a crowd, because you assume no one could understand the weight you carry or the age you feel. There's often a lingering feeling of being different, of wearing a mask of adulthood that feels convincing to the world but like a costume to you. This brings us to the core psychological paradox. The very strategies that saved you as a child become the walls that confine you as an adult. Your ability to anticipate need became chronic anxiety. Your skill at managing others' emotions became a loss of your own. Your competence and independence became isolation. The survival brain doesn't know the war is over. It keeps you on high alert, defending against battles that are no longer there, and in doing so, it can miss the very things you now crave. Joy, spontaneity, softness, deep rest. But here is the most important thing you will hear today. This wiring is not permanent. The same science that shows us how adversity shapes the brain also reveals its magnificent capacity for change. Neuroplasticity. The brain is not stone, it's more like clay, constantly being reshaped by experience. The pathways that were laid down under stress can be softened, and new, wider roads to peace can be built. Awareness is the first and most powerful step in this transformation. Simply by understanding that your overreactions or your numbness are not moral failings, but the echo of an old alarm system, you begin to separate from them. You move from "I am anxious" to "I am experiencing an old survival response." That small shift is a seismic one. The pathways for change are grounded in evidence-based therapeutic approaches that gently teach your nervous system a new language. We're not trying to erase the past, but to update the software so it can function in your present. One of the most effective ways is through therapies that work on the connection between mind and body. Remember, your trauma isn't just stored as a story, it's held as a physiological state. Somatic therapies focus on this mind-body link, helping you recognize and release the physical tension that is the residue of old fear. It starts with simple things: noticing where you hold stress in your body, a clenched jaw, tight shoulders, a hollow stomach, and learning to breathe into those spaces. It's about teaching your body that it can be safe while feeling sensation. For the cognitive loops, the relentless inner critic, the catastrophic thinking, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, offers powerful tools. CBT helps you identify those automatic negative thoughts. If I'm not perfect, I'll be abandoned. and challenge their truth. You learn to gather evidence against these old beliefs and build new, more compassionate narratives. Research on resilience has shown CBT to be a strongly effective intervention for building new mental frameworks. For many, the memories of the past feel stuck, playing like a broken record. Therapies like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, are specifically designed for this. EMDR helps the brain reprocess traumatic memories, not by erasing them, but by taking the intense emotional charge out of them. It allows the memory to become a fact of the past, rather than a recurring experience in the present. And then there is the profound work of simply learning the emotional vocabulary you were never taught. If you grew up in an environment where emotions were ignored or punished, you likely have what's called alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing what you feel. The work here is gentle and curious. It starts with a basic feelings chart. Am I angry or am I hurt? Am I anxious or am I excited? You begin to name the weather inside you, and in the naming, you gain a measure of control that doesn't involve suppression. These are not overnight fixes. They are practices. They are the daily, quiet act of reparenting yourself. It's about noticing the moment you feel that old urge to take on a burden that isn't yours and pausing. It's about allowing yourself to do something profoundly inefficient and non-productive, just for the sake of joy. It's about daring to ask for a small thing and tolerating the discomfort of that need. Your struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is a testament to a will to survive that was so fierce, it shaped your very mind. The child you were did an incredible job. They got you here. Now the adult you are has a new job. To thank that child for their vigilance, and to gently, patiently show them that the coast is clear. That it's finally safe to put down the weight, to come out from the lookout post, and to just be. To discover, perhaps for the first time, what it feels like to inhabit your own life, not as a manager or a guardian, but as a person, finally coming home to themselves. The quiet work of coming home. You've identified the patterns. You see the loops. You understand intellectually that your hypervigilance is an old ghost, but there's a gap, isn't there? A canyon between that understanding and the lived experience of your daily life. Your body still tenses when a voice is raised. Your mind still races to solve a problem that isn't yours. You still feel a pang of guilt when you sit down to rest. Knowing the map is not the same as walking a new path. This gap is where the real work resides. It's not in the grand, sweeping declarations of change, but in the micro moments. The breath you take when you feel the old panic rise. The tiny no you utter to an unnecessary demand. The conscious decision to leave a dish unwashed in the sink, not out of laziness, but as an experiment in tolerating imperfection. This work is internal reparenting. It is the act of becoming for yourself the steady, attuned, and unconditionally present guardian you needed but didn't have. To do this, we need a framework for the inner world you're navigating. Think of your psyche not as one monolithic entity, but as a system of parts, a kind of inner family. This idea, drawn from therapies like internal family systems, IFS, is incredibly useful here. You have a part that is eternally 7 years old, scared and scanning the room for danger. You have a part that is the stern, 40-year-old manager who took over at age 10, whose job is to keep that child safe by controlling everything and everyone. You have a part that might be a numb teenager who learned to check out because feeling was too painful. These aren't multiple personalities. They are emotional states, clusters of feelings and beliefs that got frozen in time. For decades, the manager part has been running the show. It's the voice that says, "Don't be silly, don't be weak, get it together, do more, be better." It exiled the scared child, locking it away because its fear and need were seen as threats to survival. But the child never left. It whispers through your anxiety, your insomnia, your sudden waves of sadness for no apparent reason. The goal of healing is not to destroy the manager. That part worked tirelessly with the best intentions to save you. The goal is to thank it, to acknowledge its service, and to politely, firmly, tell it you can take the lead from here. Then you can turn to the exiled child with compassion and say, I see you. You are safe now. I've got this. How do you actually do that? It begins with interrupting the automatic cycle in the body. Your oldest memories are stored not as stories but as physiology, as a clenched gut, a tightened chest, a shallow breath. Before you can rewrite the story, you must soothe the nervous system that is telling it. This is where practices from somatic experiencing and polyvagal theory come in. They teach you to become a detective of your own internal state. Start by noticing, without judgment. Sit for 1 minute and ask, what do I feel physically? Is there pressure, heat, tingling, heaviness? Where is it? Just name it. There is tightness in my throat. The moment you observe a sensation, you are no longer fully fused with it. You are the one noticing it. Then introduce a tiny, gentle counter-experience. If there's tightness, consciously soften your jaw, drop your shoulders an inch. If you feel hollow, place a hand on your chest and feel the warmth and weight of your own touch. This is a direct signal to your amygdala. We are not in imminent danger. We can down-regulate. It's a whisper that over time becomes louder than the old alarm. Next, you must create new experiences for the exiled parts. The inner child did not get to play, to be silly, to be carefree. So you must provide those experiences now as an adult. This feels absurd at first. It will trigger the manager who will call it a waste of time. Do it anyway. Blow bubbles, color mindlessly, swing on a swing set, put on music and dance like no one is watching. You are not doing this to be happy. You are doing it as a sacred neurological intervention. You are building new neural pathways that associate your present life with safety and pleasure, not just duty and threat. You are showing your whole system that joy is not a reward for work completed. It is a permissible, baseline state of being. The third pillar is redefining boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as the structure that allows you to truly let people in. For someone who parented their parents, a boundary feels like abandonment. Saying no feels like you are harming the other person. You must recalibrate this. A boundary is simply the definition of where you end and another person begins. It is saying, I am responsible for my emotions, my time, and my energy. You are responsible for yours. Start microscopically. I can't take that call right now. I'll call you back in an hour. I appreciate you venting, but I don't have the capacity to hold this problem for you today. The guilt will be intense. It will feel like you are breaking a sacred life-or-death rule. Sit with the guilt. Let it wash over you. Underneath it, you will find a new sensation, a sliver of space, a breath of air. That is your own life waiting for you. This work will bring up grief. Profound, disorienting grief. Not just for what happened, but for what didn't. For the birthday parties that felt like obligations, for the friendships you couldn't fully join, for the years spent as a little adult in a child's body. This grief is not a setback, it is the process. You are finally feeling the feelings that were too dangerous to feel then. Let them come. Cry for that child. Write them a letter. Give yourself the compassion you would instantly give to any other little kid who went through what you did. This emotional processing is what integrates the exiled parts. It allows the frozen story to thaw and become part of your history, not your prison. Finally, you must confront the core wound of worthiness. The child who grows up too fast learns their value is conditional. I am loved because I am useful. I am good because I am no trouble. Your worth became a transaction. Healing requires you to uncouple your being from your doing. This is the essence of self-compassion, as defined by researchers like Kristen Neff. It means treating yourself with the same kindness you offer a struggling friend. When you fail instead of the manager's whip, you idiot, you should have known better, you offer the compassionate voice. That was really hard, you're hurting, it's okay. Practice speaking to yourself in the second person. Say your own name. It's okay, your name. You're doing your best. This might feel silly. It is also neurologically potent. It creates distance from the critical inner voice and activates circuits of care and connection. The journey of the child who grew up too fast is not about becoming childish. It is about integrating all your ages, the wise, weathered adult you had to be, and the innocent, wondering child you always were, into one whole person. It's about allowing your chronological age, your emotional age, and your physiological experience to finally meet in the same room and recognize each other. You will not erase your past. Your history of strength, resilience, and profound empathy is now a superpower you can access without being enslaved by it. You will simply have more choices. You can be competent and rest. You can be the caregiver and receive care. You can be responsible and spontaneously silly. The goal is not a permanent state of bliss. The goal is fluidity. The goal is to have a nervous system that can ramp up to meet a true crisis, and then, crucially, can ramp back down into true calm. To have a heart that can hold both the sorrow of what was and the profound gratitude for the person it forced you to become, while making room for a future you didn't dare to design as a child. One day, you will notice it. A moment where the old trigger fired, but your response was different. A space opened up between the stimulus and your reaction, and in that space, you chose. You chose to breathe instead of fix. You chose to speak your need instead of swallow it. You chose to stay present with an uncomfortable feeling until it passed, like a storm cloud on its own. In that moment, you were no longer a prisoner of your history. You were its author, writing a new line. You are not behind. You are not broken. You were given a heavier backpack to carry on the hike, and you learned to walk with a strength others can't fathom. Now, it's time to notice the scenery. To set the pack down sometimes. To walk, not as a burdened survivor, but as a person who knows the weight of stones and the unparalleled lightness of setting them down, one by one, until your own two hands are free at last to reach for something new.